I admit I'm cheating a little with this one, because not only is this something that I can't easily watch in one sitting, it never got an official release on VHS or DVD or Blu-ray, Betamax, Laserdisc, anything. I've covered a couple VHSs which were essentially a tip hotline in video form. Speaking of which, an ad for a tip hotline actually showed up in the commercials for what I'm covering in this video. And it's a thing of beauty. Now take that, combine it with Captain N, and you almost have Video Power, a TV show from 1990 hosted by Johnny Arcade. No, that's not his real name. And since I don't have physical media of the show, we're going to have to improvise a little bit. The show was a collaborative effort between Bobot Communications, producer and distributor Saban Entertainment, and Acclaim Entertainment, who was still many years away from controversies, lawsuits, and eventual bankruptcy. For now, though, these three groups created a video game-based TV show, one loaded with reviews, previews, tips, and tricks about the hottest video games at the time across several platforms. And this was broadcast on local Fox affiliates in the illustrious, highly coveted time slot of 7 in the morning on weekdays.
Turn on the TV, channel 11 at 7 a.m.
Right, that's right.
Scheduling a show like this early in the morning is a total crapshoot in the US for your target audience because of how school start times are staggered here. So if I were in middle school, I would be able to watch this. But if I were in high school, school for me started at 7:30 in the morning, so I would be out the door by the time the show was on. And if I were in elementary school, then I wouldn't even be awake when this show was on. You might think that a half-hour-long show about video games could dig up plenty of material to fill that time, particularly when you factor in advertisements. Somehow, that was not the case. Most episodes begin with time wasting. Once the intro plays and the title drops, Johnny rolls into his home on a skateboard Bart Simpson style and turns on everything in his tiny huge island home.
Now that's video power.
I'll give him credit for not falling off and not looking like he just learned how to balance on a skateboard the day before filming started. That goes for the intro and when he uses it for transitions later in the show. Though I am curious how long the blooper reel for these shots would be. But that doesn't mean time wasting exclusively happened at the beginning of the show. I said Video Power has reviews and previews, but it can be hard to tell them apart. The previews are usually okay, but this show's idea of a review is usually just saying what's in the game and having a vaguely positive opinion on it. It's more of a televised press release than anything. The show also has this weird obsession with having Johnny dress up and do bad accents.
Sir Isaac Newton here. We've got a smashing preview of Red Gravity and some tips for low G-men.
There is only one real Arnold, and don't calm down, man. It's only a game. Get lost, musclehead.
His plan is to work out of there and take over the entire country. It's up to you and the ninjas to stop him.
They also seem to love having Johnny argue with himself over what's good about a game.
The sounds in this game really blew me away. Sounds don't mean anything. It's the gameplay. Sounds, the gameplay. The graphics are chill. It's the gameplay. The graphics. The gameplay. The graphics. The gameplay. Graphics.
Are you telling me you didn't like it?
No, I like it. I like weird.
Oh,
This is too weird for me.
I used to do this bit a lot in my old videos. Hey, should I bring this gag back? No. Alright, fair enough. This part of the show tends to blend together, regardless of what Johnny's doing. Beyond reviews and previews sounding similar, there are times where he previews a game and just ends up giving tips about it, which is supposed to be an entirely different segment.
A way to gain some extra points is to press select as soon as the flue starts. This will speed up the sludgy mess so you can score some more. Hey, you know what? That sounded like a Video Power Edge tip, now didn't it?
Although that's when the editing team didn't just flat out forget to balance the audio.
Simple story. It's a tough game. The object is to move each box into a dot.
Speaking of, when he does get into the tips portion, these range from just giving out cheats to advice on specific levels of specific games, which range from actually helpful to why did you even bother mentioning this? Johnny will sometimes cite his sources.
This is Game Player's magazine tip for Super Glove Ball for the Power Glove. The first tip is from Game Player's magazine for RoboCop for the NES. Now we have some serious video game inside information from Game Player's magazine. From those good fellows out at Game Player's magazine on the Video Power Edge.
And I'm just now realizing that pretty much every time he did this, he mentioned Game Player's magazine, which had their own VHSs on video games, which I am adding to my wish list right now. But he stopped doing this for several episodes at a time, and there's no clear indication why. And yes, he would occasionally slip up and get stuff wrong.
After passing the bridge, there's 2 ropes and 3 blocks. The candle all the way to the left is a 1-up. Grab it. Now you got 1 more life than you had before.
The issue here, like with pretty much any tip segment, is that for many of the tips, you need to not just have the game, but need advice for one specific part of it. And other advice is so broad, it sounds like he's just reading the instruction booklet. Credit where it's due, though, the game footage itself usually looks good, or at the very least, acceptable. Once every new moon or so, he'll do a segment outside of the studio, like visiting WCES to preview a couple of games by awkwardly talking over his own voiceover.
In Star Tropic, you're a teenage baseball star, bopping around a beautiful tropical island in the Coral Sea.
Which basically means this is just a Video Power preview, but without the set. There's also the time he visited Interplay, which was several years before the company collapsed in on itself. This is a legit good idea. Except this segment consists of asking one really basic how are games made question, getting a free t-shirt, and leaving. But this is just what happens in the first 2 minutes or so of the show. From here, Johnny throws over to an episode of The Power Team, where a cartoon version of Johnny Arcade and a group of game characters team up to fight crime, or something. I don't want to spend too much time on The Power Team because that's not the focus of this video. But if you looked at this and you thought to yourself, when did Captain N come out again? The answer is 1 year before this. It's the same concept as Captain N, or pretty much any team-based hero show, except instead of someone being transported into a video game world, the characters from the video games enter the real world. Because this was a show partially produced by and only endorsed by Acclaim, they could only use characters from games Acclaim published and got permission for, which by this point was only a couple dozen titles, most of which were based on movies or the WWF or things they otherwise couldn't get away with using characters from. As such, they had to scrape the bottom of the IP barrel to fill out the team. They also drastically altered the appearance of most of the characters, to the point that even kids at the time who played these characters' games would have trouble recognizing them. The basketball guy is supposed to be Tyrone from Arch Rivals, who was given hair, presumably to look a little less Michael Jordan-like. Then there's Kuros from Wizards and Warriors, who managed to not resemble either his in-game look or his completely deceiving box art appearance. There's also Max Force from the very kid-friendly Narc, who traded in his helmet, twin machine guns, and trademark strut for the Little League Baseball umpire look. There's Quirk, a mohawk-rocking sentient tomato from the game Quirk. Hey, you may not know that name now, but Quirk is an Atlas title, damn it. That meant something in 1990, right? And finally, Bigfoot? Yes, as in the monster truck Bigfoot, from the game Bigfoot, based on the very real monster truck Bigfoot. As for the villains they face, it's primarily Mr. Big and a couple enemies from Narc, who also don't look like their in-game counterparts, and occasionally somebody else, like Malkiel from Wizards and Warriors. Not that I actually expected the cartoon to stay true to Narc and have Mr. Big be this giant killer putty head that spits tongues at you, or say that Joe Rockhead is a PCP addict. but that would have made the show more interesting.
The Power Team would take up anywhere from 3/4 to nearly all of each show's runtime, often not even leaving 5 minutes for every other segment combined. And no, it was not good enough to justify that. Sometimes it was a minor miracle if Johnny covered more than 3 games in a single show. In one episode, Johnny said they'd cover a Bo Jackson game, but they ran out of time.
Well, what do you know? I'm out of time. Sorry I didn't get to the Bo Jackson game, but I seem to have eaten a few of my props.
The rest of this episode consisted of 1 review and 1 preview, which took up a combined less than 4 minutes of the show. But the quote-unquote review was of Phantasy Star 2, so there's that, I guess. There was also a screw-up in coordinating the Power Team with Video Power. The Power Team had 26 episodes made at the time, while Video Power had way more than that many episodes in its first run, meaning they had to re-air past episodes several times.
The only other option would have been to fill that time with reviews, previews, and tips about video games. And when I say that out loud, I hate this format.
There was also a segment that seemed to appear randomly called Stuff. This is when Johnny abandons all pretense and just shows off random third-party shit you can buy.
It's wireless. It uses an infrared signal to control the game action. And as the name says, it's for 2 players. Not just any old hand controller. This is a TAC-50 controller for the Genesis system. You grip it like you're flying a jet. Today we've got a couple of things that will let you play Game Boy in the dark. A light for Game Boy.
Hey, I used to have that Game Boy Light. It was too bright to make out the top half of the screen.
It wasn't until 15 to 20 episodes in that they thought to add a news segment, one which is preceded by random pictures of what I could verify are copies of the Baltimore Sun and New York Times newspapers. Huh, wonder if they had permission to do that. This was even more hit and miss than the Video Power Edge segment. There would be good stories, like the first showing of the Super Famicom in Japan, and not so good stories, like covering the release party for that legendary NES title, Solar Jetman.
And aside from the set, the music, Johnny's clothes, the show's graphic design in general, how else can we make this show as late 80s, early 90s as possible?
Life is one game that doesn't come with extra lives. So don't ruin yours with drugs, okay?
Now that's a dare I did not take.
You've likely noticed it by now, but there's something off-putting about this show. And that something is Johnny Arcade. This type of over-the-top personality was relatively common on TV when the show was airing, but Johnny has that certain something about him that pushes him past excitable goofball and straight into annoying spaz territory.
Yeah! Oh, yes, sir! That sends shockwaves throughout the entire screen, and just look at the powers you'll possess as werewolf. I'm just too cool. Look at this. Look at this.
Especially during the reviews, where his impressions and jokes make Pauly Shore look like Jim Carrey.
I understand that Michael worked real close with the game designers in making this game. Moonwalker is actually a video game version of Smooth Criminal music video.
Sometime in the not-too-distant future, there exists a super mechanical, no-holds-barred, in-your-face fighting machine.
Fantasy Zone is a strange new graphic dimension for the Turbo Graphics. Do not adjust your television set. What you are about to see is not extraplanetary interference. It is game footage.
If your response to that last statement was, "Who's Pauly Shore?" My point exactly.
Video Power's first run is a show. I didn't see this as a kid, but if I did, I for sure would not recognize or care about most of the Power Team. Hell, I barely tolerated Captain Man at the time. Considering the Power Team is almost the entire show, that's a huge problem. And if you're like me, having the parts I would care about relegated to the very beginning and end mean this show has a built-in 20-minute bathroom break. And even then, the other segments are wildly hit and miss. Even when they try to break from this formula, such as having Johnny on site at video game events or interviewing kids, one thing becomes pretty apparent. Johnny Arcade is awkward around kids and while conducting interviews.
Champ himself, Matthew Cohen. How does it feel, Matt?
feels great.
It feels great. Good choice of words. His score today, 7,992 points. Let's hear it, everyone.
Still, this show did technically get picked up for a second run. I have to say, technically, because they completely changed the format.
Rather than a half-hour program which was a few minutes of general tips, previews, and reviews that usually weren't reviews, and 20-plus minutes of a generic cartoon with a video game C squad battling a criminal D squad, the second run of Video Power wasn't just a video game show. It was a video game show.
Hey kids, want to play some video games, win prizes, and meet Johnny Arcade in person?
I don't know who the hell he is.
Okay.
Seriously though, I think people have this kind of revisionist history mindset where they think The Wizard came out, and then suddenly video game-based game shows started popping up everywhere. The truth is they'd been happening for years before that point. It's easy to forget that because they were usually in one disastrous format after the other and usually didn't last more than one season, particularly when the video game crash in 1983 happened.
And before someone says it, this version of Video Power came out before Nick Arcade. As for the Power Team, it got its own time slot as a standalone show and ran for another few episodes before getting mercy killed. In this new format, kids would ask Johnny Arcade questions about games, get on stage to play against other kids, answer trivia questions, and vie for the chance to run through an abandoned Blockbuster and/or Family Video grabbing prizes. That was all after the intro, with one of the most generic late 80s, early 90s attempting to be hip themes I've ever heard.
My show is kicking with maximum hype. Say Video Power? Yeah, that's right. Word.
I am absolutely saving that clip for when anyone's trying too hard to be cool.
Yeah, that's right. Word.
This is the version of Video Power I did see as a kid. In fact, I rented a couple of games back then because I saw them on this show, like The Immortal, which I quickly returned. Johnny Arcade was still the face of the show, but he was joined by Terry Lee Torok. Just imagine what a stereotypical game show host would act and sound like, and that's Terry, who was previously a host for the Nintendo World Championships.
44,000, Thor Ackerlund under a little bit of pressure, nervously fingering on that controller tonight.
Yep, I'm stealing that too.
Nervously fingering.
He would also go on to get sued by the American Toy Institute. Not sure why exactly, but the case was thrown out, so who cares. Joining them was house musician Steve Trekus, who previously had the same job for an MTV game show called Remote Control. Terry does most of the heavy lifting for this show. He commentates the gameplay, handles all prize product and sponsorship reads, puts Velcro vests on the kids for the latter half of the show, relays points and prizes, and does the bulk of the talking with the kids. So, what does Johnny, the quote-unquote host of the show, do? 4 things mainly. 1, he gives out tips in the Video Power Edge segment, one of the few things carried over from the first show's run. 2, in a segment called Johnny on the Spot, he answers clearly scripted questions from kids in the audience about certain games. And if you needed any evidence that this show was shot in New York...
In Master Blaster, who is the ultimate boss to beat?
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you. I make you laugh. I'm here to fucking amuse you.
2, he starts the timer for head-to-head segments. 3, he asks the trivia questions. And 4, he consoles the loser and congratulates the winners.
What I'm getting at is this. Johnny Arcade is billed as the host of the show, and he does maybe 1/3 of the actual hosting.
Oh, and sometimes they cut to a clip of Johnny at an event previewing a game, but these are even fewer and farther between than they were with the original show. What does Johnny do the rest of the time? Well, remember how I called him a spaz in the show's first run? Here he's graduated from spaz to coked-up werewolf. He's usually bouncing around the stage, gesticulating like a wacky, waving, arm-flailing, insufferable dude man, regardless of what segment they're in, and no matter how visibly uncomfortable it makes several of the kids.
Enrico! Are, dan, dan! Come on, suave! Woo! Come on, do a little dance for me, bud. Do a little, come on. We're rolling in and we're not stopping for no one or nothing or hey! Slam! I slammed Hogan! I shouldn't slam Jeff, but I slammed Hogan. Boom! To end up as king of the beasts, Lionheart, king of the jungle! You ever watch those Jean-Claude Van Damme films? Yeah. You into that stuff? Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm scaring him, making him nervous, and he...
I sincerely hope whoever told Johnny to act like this wakes up in a bathtub full of ice with 2 NES copies of The Immortal where their kidneys should be.
And in case you were wondering, Johnny is still extremely awkward when attempting any sort of comedy.
What is a squared circle anyway? Sounds like a tall midget. Ha ha ha! Oh boy, laugh there if you want those points. Ha ha ha! Yeah, nah. I've been looking at these two, and they've been giving each other meaner looks than Nancy Reagan gives the woman who wrote her biography. Oh. Sorry, guys.
As for the structure of the show, it starts with the Video Power Edge, and then 4 kids selected in advance try to stump Johnny by asking him questions about games. He does get stumped a few times, and this results in a small prize being given out. From what I saw, it almost always happened on episodes where they had returning winners from prior shows, but I can't say for sure how they determined which kid got to succeed given that this was all scripted. From there, the 4 kids who asked Johnny questions all get on the set and play a game in what's called the Power Play round. The 2 kids who do the best at said game advance to a 4-question trivia round and then play another Power Play round, sometimes featuring a different game. Whoever does best through both of these rounds is the day's champion, and that kid gets to run through the Mall-O-Matic, basically a poorly designed game store, collecting prizes before a timer runs out. If they get the secret prize, they win something special at the end. A fairly simple format, but it often seems like the show is flying by the seat of its pants or making stuff up as it goes along. While the show presents Johnny Arcade as some kind of video game savant, it's apparent he reads scripted tips and answers and doesn't know what's going on for several games. He made this extra apparent during, for example, the Mega Man 3 Champions episode, where he called it his favorite game but also didn't know that this game doesn't have points, even after seeing it multiple times that week.
Well, unfortunately, you asked a question on one of my personal favorite games. I know Mega Man 3 backwards and forwards, so I'll rush the answer. You guys, Mark and Martin, you guys had the highest point total, so you'll be going on to the Video Power Challenge now.
That's something even younger me heard and thought, that's not right. Compare this with another video game show from the early 80s, Starcade, where the host, Jeff Edwards, played several arcade games featured on the show so he would know what he was talking about, even giving advice to the contestants before they started playing.
I know that if you line up the diamond blocks, you get extra bonus points, but I don't know whether you have time enough to do that in 50 seconds. What do you think?
I don't think so. I'm not that good at it either.
What are you going to do, just go for the snow peas?
Yeah, I'm going to try.
All right, remember, if you see a flashing block, try to kick that because that'll be extra points. All right, and if you want to go for the Cinestar before it's built, if you have a couple of Cinebombs, you get 500 points each time you hit there. Okay, Ron, you need points here. All I can tell you about this game is that you have a joystick there that goes fast or slow. The faster you go, the more points you can get.
Okay.
So go, just keep on firing and don't fall in any holes.
He also sounded a lot more genuine when somebody won the day's grand prize.
Go, 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 go. You did it, David, with the last second to go. Good for you, you got yourself a Munchmobile. You're terrific. Way to go, David got it all.
Jeff actually started playing video games because the prior host of this show got fired for his lack of knowledge about them, and he didn't want to make the same mistake. But he actually wound up becoming a fan of video games, to the point that years after the show was over, he was known as a prominent Quake, Doom, and Unreal Tournament player. Johnny Arcade? Not so much.
Let's focus on the Power Play rounds first. Everyone, hey, wait a goddamn minute, did they just recycle the timer from the Nintendo World Championship? Anyway, while the kids are
nervously fingering
their way through that show's games, Terry provides play-by-play of their progress. He at least seems like he took a little time to know something about the games on the show. But he also makes mistakes pretty often trying to keep track of what's happening in any game that doesn't have a visible score. For example, there's the time in the same Mega Man 3 episode as before, when he said one kid hadn't progressed very far in the Wily's Castle stage, but they were in fact over halfway through it.
Plan. Back to our possible leader at this point. It looks like Mark. He hasn't advanced too far in this level, but nonetheless, he is taking down any enemy he sees.
And I can't unsee the moment where one of the contestants died and had to start the Snake Man level over, but Terry said he was in the lead.
Adam is set and ready to go, and he's rolling through. As you can see, he's in excellent shape. Our current leader right now goes from Martin, and it goes over to Adam. Adam is now in the lead, the first man of video games.
This wasn't a one-off thing either. He did this multiple times.
From Keith right down to our man Eric. Now check it out. He's going to the upper level. He's taken on a couple of tough enemies here. Already took out heat waves, and now he's moving on. He's concentrating very hard, dropping down a level. Maybe a good move, maybe a smooth move. Oh yes, he takes out another one.
Which leads to another problem. Sometimes they just won't tell the kids how they're being evaluated, but the real problem is that some of the games that they play for this are not score-based. So they have to find different metrics to determine who wins, like level progression, or an enemy's health bar, or the amount of items a person collects. Not only can this encourage stuff like players being passive or having fewer items because they were used as currency to progress further in a game, but Terry often has a hard time telling what's going on. And Johnny, who doesn't talk at all during these segments, definitely doesn't know what's going on.
This problem was compounded whenever they played a sports game. The power play timer was usually so short, it was a struggle for anyone to score points in, say, a baseball game or a football game. Thankfully, there was an off-screen set of judges who determined the kids that did best at the games. I can only imagine the absolute clown show this would turn into if Johnny and Terry were the ones who had to pick the winners.
There's another problem with this show, and some of you might have been thinking this after seeing some clips of the first power play round, and specifically, the kids who were playing in the first power play round. In the Nintendo World Championships, competitors were split into 3 different age groups, which makes sense. I know 18-year-old me would beat 13-year-old me who would beat 8-year-old me at pretty much any video game. Video Power didn't do this, so sometimes you would see first or second graders going up against middle and high schoolers. It goes about as well as you would expect.
When that round's over, 2 kids move on to the trivia portion. There are 4 questions. 3 of them are worth 10 pizza points, and 1 is worth 20 mushroom points. These points help determine who the day's champion is, as the power play round after this gives 50 star points to the winner.
Those of you who can do math have likely noticed another big problem with this particular portion of the show. Because the second round is worth 50 points, and the most points you can possibly get from the trivia round is 50, outside of one oddly specific scenario, this does not help determine a winner at all.
The only time the trivia matters is if one kid finishes first in the first power play round, gets all the questions right, and then loses the second power play round. In this case, there would be a tie on points, and the tiebreaker was who won the first power play round. In all the episodes I managed to watch, this never happened. The only thing I did see was a kid who got all the trivia questions right, lost the second power play round, and because he finished second in the first round, the other kid won. The showrunners must have realized how pointless the points and the trivia section were, because eventually they added a 5th question about identifying whatever game popped up on a screen. Instead of being worth points, though, it was worth whatever random game they put up as a prize. A game which was sometimes also used as a consolation prize for those who were eliminated. I guess their prize selection was a bit limited. As for the trivia questions, they're often about whatever game or games are on the show.
What is the green liquid slime that drips down in level 2? Yeah.
Chemicals?
Chemicals is incorrect. I shall repeat the question and the 3 multiple choice answers for you. Don't buzz in.
But they do throw in other stuff, particularly for when the contestants have to guess what game or level a music track is from.
Jeez. Hit it, Steve. Wow, I love this show. Is it A, DuckTales, B, Rescue Rangers? Yes!
DuckTales.
DuckTales is correct. This man knows it.
The questions become multiple choice if no one answers right away and only one kid can buzz in. But one of the answers is always so obviously fake that it becomes a 50-50 guessing game.
Boys, for 10 points, name the button you have to push to start the game. A, B, eject, or C, start. Is incorrect. Play a little bit more for my man right here. Is it A, Double Dragon 3,
B, interesting iguana 4, or C, Little Nemo? Yes, sis.
A.
A, Double Dragon 3 is correct.
This also happens if one of the kids answers wrong before the choices are listed, giving the other kid free rein. I do have to ask, when one kid gets the question wrong, why does the other kid still have to buzz in if they're the only person who can answer?
Epsilon or C, A and B?
A and B.
Buzz in, please.
A and B.
A and B is correct. And B, Captain Crustacean, or C, the Joker?
Joker.
Buzz in? Right?
The Joker.
The Joker is correct.
And then there's the bait and switch tactic, where Johnny will start going down one line of thought and then the question at the end will have absolutely nothing to do with it.
Donatello and Raphael are turtles, and so is Leonardo. But they've got a friend named Splinter, who's not a turtle at all.
What? Yes. A rat is incorrect. Now I shall repeat the question.
But they've got a friend named Splinter who's not a turtle at all. What kind of animals is Michelangelo?
In Ninja Turtles 2, there's a white tiger. Wow! That makes life a catastrophe for Donatello and the boys. For 10 points, name the button you have to yes.
Vincent Van Gogh.
Vincent Van Gogh is incorrect. I shall repeat the question, and 3 multiple choice answers are for you, so don't you buzz in until you hear everything, okay? There is a white tiger that makes life a catastrophe for Donatello and the boys. For 10 points, name the button you have to push to start the game. When the turtles are hungry, there's only one thing they want to eat. For 20 points, name the part of the jumping scorpions that fires lasers.
Johnny does this quite a few times over the show's run, and when he pulls this shit with the trivia, it sometimes baffles the kids so much that they don't know how to respond to even the easiest of questions.
One of the many treasures being sought by our dapper band of ducks in DuckTales is the scepter of the Incan king, which is located in a particular part of the map. In what part of the United States will you find the Oakland Coliseum? Nobody! Okay, now the 3 multiple choice answers, and only one of you champs has a shot now. Here we go. A, Transylvania. B, the Himalayas. Or C, Oakland. Nobody! Oakland! Where do you find the Oakland? Oakland. Oakland. Oh, wow. Nobody. Okay.
The show also struggled to stay consistent on almost but not quite correct answers. Like if the answer to a question was Final Fantasy, but a kid said Final Fantasy II, some shows they would accept that, and some shows they wouldn't.
Hit it. Yes. Yeah.
Turtles 2.
Will we accept that? No. Okay, keep playing it.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1.
Is correct. Hit it. Oh, yeah.
Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja... We will accept that? Ninja Gaiden 2? Yes. Okay. The 10 points are... Bam!
The second power play round follows this, and sometimes they just made some really bizarre choices. It was usually head-to-head score attack like the first round, sometimes even being the same stage in the same game. But I guess they thought people would get bored of that, and they changed not just the game, but the rules sometimes. One series of episodes started with Super Off-Road in the first round, and in the second round, they switched to different parts of Maniac Mansion, which Terry described as a role-playing game.
Passing along here as we go through the mansion. It's kind of one of these role-playing games. It's a little slow at times, but a lot of fun, and it develops your map-building skills. Now,
They judged Maniac Mansion by how many items the kids collected in 1 minute. If you've ever played an adventure game, you understand why that is a terrible way to judge progress.
In the Battletoads episodes, they sometimes had the players play the same level co-op. The result was not a show of who was best at racking up points or the game in general, but who was best at trolling the other player. There were also times they had the players go head-to-head in a game, like WrestleMania Challenge on the NES, where one kid got his ass kicked so bad that he straight up lost the match with more than 20 seconds left on the timer. But Terry had to keep hyping the crowd for a match that was already over as they started a new fight, so they weren't just spending 20 seconds doing nothing. Once they figure out who the day's big winner is, Johnny Arcade grabs a couple consolation prizes, or whatever else he feels like, including stuff like a skateboard or a basketball, and gives them to the runner-up before absconding with them off camera. The day's big winner gets a helmet plunked on their head and is told to run through this media maze grabbing prizes. It's part mall, part video rental store, It's just like a mini mall. The kids have 1 minute to run through this mini mall grabbing games and sticking them to the vest and helmet before going down a slide, which acts as the finish line. Whatever they bring with them, they keep. If they get a certain prize game, they also win the grand prize, which changed every day. What I just explained sounds really straightforward, but with the way this show was run, it was at sometimes confusing and other times disappointing. For one, either the Velcro on the vests and helmets sucked, or there wasn't enough Velcro on the games, because these things constantly fell off as the kids ran through the course. Some of the kids just didn't bother using the Velcro and carried everything to the slide, and some of the smarter kids would grab stuff to throw down the slide with them. Because the mini-mall included prizes too big or heavy to attach to the vest, like play sets or skateboards or baseball gloves, they pretty much had to allow this. That also included prize packs, bags stuffed with either packing paper or more games, which didn't count if the secret prize happened to be in there. Any kid who didn't grab one of these when they were available did not understand the assignment. More importantly, the grand prizes were not consistent at all. One day it would be a mountain bike, or a Sega Genesis, or a Neo Geo, which are all awesome choices for grand prizes.
I'm also realizing that I don't think I ever saw a kid win a Neo Geo game on this show, just the console.
But for other shows, the grand prize would be an NES Miracle Piano Teacher. Not the NES, just the piano teacher. Then the grand prize would be a radio-controlled car, or a playset basketball game. Things like these would also be given out as normal-ass prizes on other days. Hell, on one show, the secret prize game won the kid a Miracle Piano Teacher, but by being the day's big winner, he automatically won a Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. You tell me which one your 6 to 14-year-old self would give more of a shit about winning. Arguably a bigger problem than that? Variety. The grand prizes I mentioned would show up several times, which is understandable. But less understandable was the lack of variety of games in the mini-mall. After watching 5 episodes of Video Power, you've basically seen close to 95% of the games in that mini-mall. It was made to look more impressive by using several copies of the same game over and over and over. This was only made even more obvious by some kids finishing their runs with more than one copy of the same game. In one episode, a kid finished with 2 copies of Mercenary Force, 2 copies of The Rescue of Princess Blobette, and 2 copies of The Immortal.
Here's a Game Boy Mercenary Force game. Here's another Game Boy game, Mercenary Force. For the Game Boy, it's Rescue of Princess Blobette. And look, it's Blobette. The Immortal for Nintendo. Another Immortal.
What's a 90s kid to do with all those extra games? Simple. Take them to Funko Land. Everyone under the age of 36, this is where you pause the video, look up what Funko Land is, and find another reason to hate GameStop.
The opposite problem also happened, where some kids were really picky and hardly grabbing anything in the mini-mall. It got so bad for one contestant that Johnny and Terry picked out games for him. Imagine watching The Price is Right and seeing a contestant flame out so bad that Bob Barker or Drew Carey walks across the set, grabs an entire dinette set, and throws it at them, yelling, "Just take it!"
Some might say these kids panicked or froze or just didn't know what to do in the moment. But I like to think that these kids looked at these walls of games and thought, these games suck, I don't want any of these.
The major problem with this part of the show is the rules. By that I mean Terry would sometimes just not say what they were. You could forgive not mentioning the time limit because there was a clock at the top of the set. But if you're a kid in an electronic candy store, odds are you'll get tunnel vision and not pay attention to it. He also wouldn't mention needing to hit the slide before time ran out, or that they had to go to the slide at all. Some kids would be late getting to the slide, but the time limit thing was almost never enforced, and they would let them win whatever they had anyway. The other solution to this was having Terry yell at the kids where to go.
He's ready to roll to the top, but he's going to shop some more. Time to go for the top. Steven, go up. He's got to get up there. Time is ticking away.
And when that didn't work, Johnny would turn into a cocaine-fueled sheep herder and chase the kid through the course so they would end up at the slide. This even extended to the grand prize. This had to have been something that changed during the show's run, but in some episodes, Terry would show the secret game, say the grand prize the kid could win for finding it, and sometimes drop a hint about where it was.
Find the secret prize in the mall? I'll give you a clue. It's close to the door. It's WF WrestleMania. What do you got for him today, Johnny, if he finds this prize? Yeah, check it out. A Glacier bike. It's a mountain bike, and it is yours.
And in other shows, the prize game was kept secret, and he wouldn't tell the kids what it was, let alone where it was.
You know a secret prize. We're going to reveal the secret prize, and you at home will understand the secret prize in just a moment.
But the worst offense committed by the show happened during one of the Days of Thunder episodes. The big winner of the show was told that Sword of Vermilion was the secret prize, and she could win a Sega Genesis if she got it.
First of all, the prize to look for, the hidden prize, is called Sword of Vermilion. It's somewhere in the mall, and if you find it today, what do we have for her today, Steve Trigas? We have an entire Sega Genesis system. That's for you, Don.
Well, she did find Sword of Vermilion, and...
Here's one more, Sword of Vermilion, yeah. But look at, she's got all kinds of game. You got another East pack. They're full of prizes. There's got to be another 12, 13, 14, 15. I estimate her take to buy about 17, 18 games. Not only that, she's a big winner. She's coming back for the Friday show. Way to go, Dawn. Another big win on this half-hour Video Power. Thanks for watching.
They didn't give her the Sega Genesis. Shit, they don't even acknowledge she got the secret prize game. Look, the weird or nonsensical structure of some challenges, or the buzzers sometimes just not going off in the trivia section.
Racing, or C, it's just rack sand backwards. Yes, ding!
If those are signs of a slapdash production, what do you call flat out forgetting to award the day's grand prize?
I saw this episode as a kid and I thought I imagined them not giving her the grand prize for finding the right game. Like, maybe she got Sword of Sodan, not Sword of Vermilion. But no! They show her in the credit sequence too, and she still doesn't have the Genesis because the hosts all ran into the crowd to dance their ignorance away. Wait, is that Slater from Saved by the Bell?
While the people on this show were sometimes too scatterbrained to handle give grand prize to people who win grand prize, they did somehow manage to keep track of a tournament-like string of shows. There would be 5 episodes per week. 4 episodes would determine the big winners, and then on Friday, every winner would come back and face each other to win some more crap and a chance to come back for the semifinals and finals, where they could win a trip to Universal Studios Hollywood and $10,000 from Tiger Electronics for a scholarship fund. And because of what happened earlier, I feel the need to say they did remember to award all of this to the ultimate winner. Because they won it automatically, not because it was tied to a prize game for running through the maze. Congratulations, Arthur, and may your majestic mullet forever flow freely.
Well, we can at least be certain Arthur had a good time in all of this. The other contestants? Debatable.
One former contestant had a lot to say about how the show was run, and it seems to explain some of the more awkward things about this iteration of Video Power. I should note that I couldn't find the shows he was on, but there are episodes which seem to be straight up missing online which do appear in episode lists, and there's evidence that the games he mentioned were played on the show. By the way, big time kudos to the people who uploaded episodes of Video Power to YouTube and the archive. This show would be lost to time without you. Anyway, he alleged that there were so few girls on Video Power who were decent at video games because they were usually weeded out in the selection process. A bit of an iffy claim, as some of the daily Video Power champions were girls, including the one on the very first episode. Although there were also girls like Dana, who didn't make it past the first screen of this Mega Man level that involved jumping one platform and climbing a ladder. He also claimed this game's challenges involved sports games with teams that had varying stats, and the showrunners made no effort to have everyone play as or go up against the same teams. As a result, he played a football game as the Super Bowl champions and easily took first place. The same thing happened later with a baseball game, as he was matched up against a really bad CPU team and won that round as well. When he ran through the game maze, there were several copies of the supposed secret prize game throughout, which isn't all that surprising. More importantly though, no one told him there was a finish line to the maze or a time limit. So when time ran out and he didn't make it, They had to run it a second time and use that take for the broadcast. Another contestant, one which I could verify was on the show, was initially told he'd be on the episode where they played Mega Man, only to be told later that he'd be on the show for Tecmo Bowl and Bases Loaded. The kid threw a fit and they reassigned him to the episode with Mega Man 3 and Little Nemo, which he bought to practice ahead of time. So at least some of the kids knew what they were playing in advance of each taping. He also said some companies sent all the contestants neon gloves with the fingers cut out and padding on the thumbs, saying they would have to wear them for the show. Sure enough, this guy showed up to the tapings with the gloves and the showrunner said, "You weren't supposed to get those, take those off." Finally, another ex-contestant I could verify was on the show said that they were at 4 tapings total, and during one of them, Johnny Arcade got pissed and blew a gasket in front of all the kids, teaching them a few new 4-letter words in the process.
I told you Johnny looked awkward around kids.
Like the previous contestant, they verified that the prize maze had the same 30 to 40 games over and over, adding, quote, "You couldn't leave there without a copy of The Immortal if you tried."
Those poor bitches and/or bastards.
The same contestant said they ran the prize maze twice, winning, among many other things, a mountain bike. While they received everything else they won, the mountain bike never showed up, even after their parents called the showrunners wondering where it was. Shocking, right? I mean, this show seemed so organized and professional.
And yet, as a kid, I really wanted to be on this show, because I was willing to put up with absolutely everything else if it meant I could play and win some video games.
As much of a mess as the production could be at times, Video Power is still somewhat of a guilty pleasure for me. Aside from it being drenched in early 90s kitsch, it was some of my earliest exposure to competitive gaming. I didn't live near places where local competitions happened, or where the Nintendo World Championships or Video Power happened, so I would take part vicariously by watching the kids who could. At the same time, I feel like I dodged some major bullets by not ending up with NES games like The Immortal, or Dragon's Lair, or Dash Galaxy and the Alien Asylum, or Total Recall. Video Power didn't survive long into the 90s, and everyone went their separate ways. Saban Entertainment went from Video Power to X-Men, and eventually Power Rangers, so their future was bright. Until it wasn't. And as for Johnny Arcade, well, first off, his real name is Stevie Paskowski. Second, he took nearly a decade-long break from TV and reappeared in the 2000s to play several roles on several shows. Good shows, sometimes in recurring roles. Law and Order, Brotherhood, Windy Acres, Damages. He did well for himself. And in the characters he portrayed, his performances were much more believable than Johnny Arcade ever was.
Video Power in general is a relic, a product of its time and the corporations behind it. I both miss it and don't miss it, where the reasons I don't miss it are, well, everything I talked about before, and the reasons I do miss it are largely born out of selfishness and envy. I really wanted to go on the show and win a Super Nintendo. But then one showed up for Christmas, and I never looked back. I've completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, till next time.
With maximum height, say video power, yeah, that's right, word. I've got the ability to make you win. You want the edge? I'll push the power surge. Let her rip.